Let's talk about the housing market crash of 2024, but also the 10 years prior to this. It was supposed to crash every single year leading up to that, especially if you read anything online in the YouTube comments, on Twitter. And if it doesn't happen this year, don't worry, just wait, because it will happen next year. If it doesn't happen next year, it will happen the year after that. There's actually a pretty simple formula here on YouTube. If you're a new content creator and you want to get views on your channel and you're talking about Canadian real estate, you have to be extremely negative, right? You have to openly say how much you hate the government, and your channel will grow. That's just the truth. You look at the fastest growing channels on the internet right now, and those are the topics they are covering. And I'm not even saying I disagree with most of what they say. I think a lot of the points that they have are valid. But there's also this overwhelming narrative of like, don't worry, guys, it's going to get better for you. And as a viewer, I understand why that would be something that you'd want to watch. So we all use clickbait, right? Like, I never started making videos here on YouTube because I wanted to become a content creator. I'm a business owner. I thought this would be a neat opportunity to share my perspective on the market. And I got to meet a lot of cool people along the way. And you can go look at my channel. A lot of my thumbnails and titles are absolutely clickbait. And my idea is like, that's marketing. I got to get you to click on it so they can actually show you what's really going on. But there's so many other channels out there right now, and I'm not going to talk about one specifically because it's happening everywhere, that are just only negative. And honestly, I think a lot of what they're talking about is pure garbage. So why do housing crash videos, why do doom and gloom videos, why do I hate the government videos do so well? And I would argue maybe a lot of the times it's because the viewers watching it just want to agree with it so badly. Even if they don't fully believe what they're watching, they're like, yes, this is exactly what I want to happen because it will help my situation. And when we talk about this great big Canadian housing crash that's obviously going to happen every single year and actually started to happen in 2023, but didn't really end up crashing, more just a major correction. You see terms thrown out like 30%, 40%, 50%. I'll tell you, if housing prices go down 50% in the next 12 months, your house is the last thing you're going to have to worry about because something really bad is going on in the world. And yes, I am a real estate agent. So I make my living when people buy and sell real estate, right? So before you type that comment, that is the truth. There's no hiding behind that, right? But when I look at my future, it's because I've invested in real estate. That's going to be my retirement. The selling of real estate is just so that I can buy more real estate because I actually believe in it. And when you look at the overall Canadian numbers, we would need a massive decrease in sale price right now to get back to 2019 levels. It's really hard for me to believe moving forward that housing prices are going to go to what they were pre-pandemic. I just like people that put their money where their mouth is, right? Like, I believe in real estate, so I invest in it. That's what I do. I really like that. For people that think the housing market's going to come down 50%, if you own a house right now, what are you doing? You should be selling that house immediately so that you can buy back in when it is down 50%. Like, if that's what you think is going to happen, that's the advice you're giving everybody else. Are you actually following the things that you are saying? But this isn't a one-sided video. I get why people are mad. I understand why people think housing prices should go down, that none of this is fair, that maybe our country isn't being run the way that it should be. Because it wasn't your fault that you were born a little bit later and that you didn't have a chance to buy your first house because you were in grade 3. It's like, okay, well, what's your alternative if you can't buy that house? Well, you could continue to live with your family. You could rent, but rental prices are way higher than they were in the past. And it just feels like there's no hope. Or perhaps you're in a position where you actually have the means necessary to get into the market, but you're nervous because you don't want to get in because everyone's telling you that prices are going to go down. And let's say prices do start going down in a meaningful way. Do you think there's anybody else in Canada that has the same thought process as you? They'll start to try to get in as soon as you start to try to get in as well. In my market here in Toronto, it's like 12 to 13 times your average income to buy the average property. Now, even though I think that stat's a little ridiculous because nobody's buying a semi-detached home as their first property here, you're starting with condos, which are probably 4 to 5 times your income. It's still insane when you break down those numbers. We had Ron Butler on our podcast recently, and he went on one of his famous rants about boomers versus millennials. And like, I don't care if your interest rate was 20%. Like, yeah, that sounds crazy, but you paid 150 grand for your house. At 5% interest rates today, it's way more difficult to buy a property if you are not already in the market than it was in the past. I like sports, so I love using sports analogies. Watching dynasties fall is a lot of fun if you're not a fan of them or if you're not a part of it. So watching the housing market fall, watching speculators lose their shirt, hold the bag, all the terms that we hear online feels really good. Just like watching the New England Patriots dynasty fall apart. Like right now, it's so good to root against the Kansas City Chiefs. If you're not a part of it, it feels really good from the outside looking in just to root against it. And then there's institutional buyers. Now, it's not as big of an issue yet in Canada as it is in the States. But you know what institutions are starting to take over here in Canada because we're on our way to becoming a renter nation? They're starting to build all the new rental stock. And it seems like a lot of what the government is doing to try to solve our housing issue is just to try to tax us more and give you more affordable rentals. But they don't really seem to be promoting this idea of home ownership, because everything they've done for home ownership, even the new 30-year amortization, buying new homes for first-time home buyers, like that is not very helpful for most of this country. And then on top of everything else, you hear stories and you see CBC did a marketplace on it about mortgage fraud and how people are buying houses that shouldn't be able to buy houses because they're falsifying documents and no one's really doing anything about it. So like all of that wrapped into one, it's like, I want the housing market to crash because this is ridiculous and none of this seems fair. Okay, I've taken a second to cool down. Let's talk about a few reasons why, myself personally, I could be totally wrong, why I don't think housing prices in Canada are going to go below 2019 levels. The first thing is how the lenders are addressing what's happened with interest rates, okay? They are extending amortizations for people to allow them to keep their properties. I'm not even saying I agree with this. All I'm saying is that this is very much happening. I personally saw it myself when my mortgage renewal came up. They don't want your house. They don't want to deal with what happened in previous times. They're going to extend that amortization, which is not necessarily better for the homeowner. You're just paying more interest, but you do allow to keep your property. So that alone is going to prop up the market where there's people that were on the cusp of being in trouble that now don't have to sell, that can keep their property. Then you have these variable mortgages that are fixed payments, right? Where as long as you're paying all the interest and paying $1 of principal, the bank doesn't care. They're getting their money, you keep your property. Again, this is not good for a homeowner. You've seen some of the statements online. Some people's amortizations have shot up on these type of variable rate mortgages to like 60 years. Now, if rates end up coming down, that will be okay. But again, this is something that wasn't previously available in the past that's allowing people to hold on to their properties maybe longer than they should. Interest rates. Interest rates are probably going to go down, right? They're not going to go back to 2% at any point in the near future. But does the fixed rate get to 3.5%, 4% in the next 12 to 18 months? Yeah, probably. Does the variable rate go down where the overnight rate gets to 3.5 instead of the 5% right now? And that means that variable rates are in the early to mid fours? Yeah, that's probably likely what's going to happen at some point. Because you look at the peak of the market in February 2022, other than Calgary, which is just its own little thing doing crazy regardless of interest rates, and you compare it to prices today, I can tell you my market of Toronto, from peak to trough, we were basically down 16% from the top of the market. If you took what the average sale price was at the peak and the average sale price when we dropped off, and you looked at where the mortgage rates were at that time, it's not actually less expensive to own that home right now because the rates are so much higher. So yes, purchase price is down, but rates are higher. So if we saw that happen on that direction with prices moving down, where we did see a meaningful difference in our market, but we didn't see the crash I think a lot of people thought was going to happen, what do you think is going to happen if interest rates go down? Do you think prices are going to go down? No, they're not. Prices are either going to hold or they're going to go up. And then if you look into the future, there's developers right now. We know we need housing. A lot of us can agree on that, right? We know we need to build more housing. Developers are just not launching projects right now because they can't, because the interest rates don't make sense. The investors aren't buying because the government is doing all the things to make sure you don't want to invest in Canada right now. It's getting ridiculous. This is not an issue yet, but it's going to be an issue in 5 years, in 10 years, when our population continues to grow and we aren't building the housing that we need today. And that's going to have an impact on both rental prices and home sale prices. A good chunk of Canadians that own their homes don't have a mortgage on it. So they're not financially really in a tough spot right now. And there's another huge percentage of people that own their homes that if they were in a really, really bad spot, they still have a ton of equity in it because they bought that home 5, 10, 15 years ago. And then there is a percentage of the market that bought at the peak or close to the peak and took a variable rate, and everything else in their life has gone up because of the carbon tax and gas prices and everything happening. And I feel really bad for them because there's a lot of really hardworking Canadians that got stuck, that frankly got unlucky. These weren't just all real estate speculators trying to screw everything up for our future generations. These were families trying to make a life here in Canada that got stuck at a really, really bad time. In the last 45 years in the market here that I service in the city of Toronto, the average sale price has gone down 9 times compared to the previous year. It's gone up 36 times. So 80% of the time, prices go up compared to the previous year. But what we need to remember is that in the early 90s, we had 7 years in a row where prices went down. I'm not saying it's not possible that happens again, but the biggest dip in price, I think we've already seen. I'm well aware a lot of people are not going to like things I've said in this video, or you're going to like them or have your difference of opinion. I just think, like, make sure when you're consuming content here on the internet, you're watching all sides of it, right? Not just getting fed all this stuff that you want to hear because you want it to be true. I want the Toronto Maple Leafs to win the Stanley Cup, but I'm realistic in the fact that if you look at history, it's probably not going to happen. And I hope I'm proven wrong this year. All right, that's it. I'm sure the comment section will be fun for this one. Thanks for watching.